On the prequel to the 43rd episode, we're talking about the Oscars and previewing Mrs. Doubtfire. Oh, welcome back to This Film Is Lit, the podcast, where we talk about movies that are based upon books. It's the prequel to the 43rd episode. We don't have a Learning Things this segment this week because we're busy. We've been out of town. We've had a lot of stuff going on, both very busy with work currently. So we didn't get to do as much research as we would normally like to do. So we're just going to chit-chat about the Oscars, which we did mention at the last, during the Black Klansman episode, since it was nominated for an Oscar, and that's kind of one of the reasons we did it. So let's talk about the Oscars a little bit.
Does this make up for Do the Right Thing not winning the Oscar for you right now?
I'm snake bit. I mean, every time somebody's driving somebody, I lose.
So, Black Klansman was nominated for 4 awards.
Yes.
And it won one of them.
Yeah.
Which was cool.
Which is also kind of a trend, it looked like, for the evening. We didn't watch the whole awards, but I kind of glanced in and I was looking at them today. It looked like a lot of stuff won an award.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of got split around a lot. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about some of it. But yeah, it did. It won one award, and the award it won was probably the one we were most interested in that regard, because it's Best Adapted Screenplay.
Yeah.
So, and Spike Lee got his first Oscar. He's been nominated 5 times now, I think they said, during the award ceremony. It was one of the few moments we actually happened to turn on and watch.
Yeah,
was
we
when they won.
happened to turn it on like just in time to
we were
see
kind
him win
of
that.
kicking back and forth between things, and then, he walked up right on stage and jumped in Sam Jackson's arms.
Which was adorable.
Yeah. And I thought it was a really nice gesture, too, that the rest, because there was 4 writers. He was one of 4 writers nominated for the award. I liked the fact that everybody else is like, the rest of them were like, you can just take the whole time, Spike Lee. You've waited long enough. He's been waiting 30 years for this. You go do that. I thought that was kind of nice and a nice gesture. Because he did not end up winning in a Best Director or Best Picture. So, which... some of the other awards that did go out, though, Mahershala Ali won for Best Supporting Actor for The Green Book, which I believe is his second Oscar, because he won
he won for Midnight, didn't he?
Yeah, which I still haven't seen. I really wanted to see. I think somebody just showed it around here, and it doesn't matter. Like at a student group or something showed it. Regina King won Best Supporting Role for If Beale Street Could Talk, which is a movie I hadn't even heard of until the Oscars. I didn't even know what it was.
I don't think I had heard of it until the Golden Globes.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's what I mean. Until like the awards started coming out.
It did not come here.
Very small, obviously. Like it must have been like a very niche sort of kind of indie film, or maybe not indie, but not a big name movie that shows up at every theater. Olivia Colman won Best Actress for The Favorite, which we wanted to see, but
I really wanted.
We
to see
didn't get
The
a chance.
Favorite.
We'll see it, but we didn't get a chance in theaters. Just as the time we were going to look to get tickets for it, they had like 2 showings a day at like noon. So it was like, all right. But it's funny because I didn't realize who she was. And then I saw her and I was like, where do I know her from? Realized she's the policewoman in Hot Fuzz who constantly does all the sexual innuendos, like the one woman on the squad. And I was like, oh, that is her. And she's won an Oscar. So I thought that was interesting. And then Rami Malek won for Bohemian Rhapsody, which I didn't see. I didn't see any of those 4 movies. So I have very little to say on those. Into the Spider-Verse did win for Best Animated, which was exciting because that was like maybe my favorite film of last year.
Yeah.
Up there, top 3 for sure. My top 3 movies, coincidentally, are exactly the same as Mikey Newman's from Movies with Mikey. We watched his top 3 top 5 films of 2018, and my top 3 were verbatim his. It was Black Panther, Into the Spider-Verse, and 8th Grade, I think, were his 3.
Yeah.
And mine are in the same order as his, too, and I don't remember exactly. I think it was 8th Grade, Black Panther, Into the Spider-Verse, I think. Or Black Panther and the Spider-Verse might have been switched, but... Black Panther did win several awards, mostly technical.
Best costume.
But that was the big one that people were talking about was Best Costume because the costume designer was also, she works with Spike Lee a lot. She did like all the costuming for Do the Right Thing and a lot of his earlier. I assume she probably still works with him. I don't know, but so yeah, best costume design one, which makes sense. Looking at the costumes from that movie were fantastic. Alfonso Cuarón, a Harry Potter alum, won Best Director for Roma, which that's on Netflix. We could watch that one. Heard it was really good and kind of probably the general consensus people's choice for maybe what should have won Best Picture potentially. That or Black Panther maybe.
Best Director, I was really pulling for Spike Lee.
I was too.
It's hard to be mad that
Cuarón's a great director, and from what I've heard, Roma's fantastic. I was pulling for Spike Lee. I've said it earlier. I don't think this was his. At least it didn't stick out. This Black Klansman didn't stick out in my head among the 3 or 4 of his films I've seen. At least 4. I've seen Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, Inside Man. It's probably better than Inside Man in the sense Inside Man's kind of like a generic like thriller action-y film. It's not like super interesting. But Do the Right Thing and I think Malcolm X were both more deserving in terms of like the director choices he made with those films. A little more interesting, maybe. But I still would have liked for him to win for Best Director. We'll see if he still... I'm sure he's not done. I don't think it doesn't strike me as being done directing. And then Green Book, controversially... won Best Picture, and people on the internet were not happy about it.
And now, you were saying this about Beale Street. I had not heard of Green Book until the award season started.
Yeah, I had heard of it because of it had a pretty big... Not that Beale Street didn't, but the cast in it with Mahershala Ali and Viggo Mortensen and I think Octavia Spencer was in it. It had a pretty studded cast, and so I had heard of it and seen like trailers, but I think it came to our theater, but I just didn't go see it. So, and it looks, when I watched the trailers, I was like, this looks interesting. This looks like it could be good. But yeah, it's controversial. Movie Bob, one of the critics I like a lot, said in his opinion after he tweeted that he thinks potentially the worst movie to ever win Best Picture. In his opinion, he did not like the movie at all. And I know a lot of people had problems with it, sort of for its focusing on. I don't know.
The general consensus that I saw, and please bear in mind that I have not seen this movie. Yeah. The general consensus that I was seeing, the things that people were upset about, was like, at worst, it's like a white savior type of a narrative. At best, it's something that might have done well 30 years ago, but it's just really tone deaf.
It's a little tone deaf currently. Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. And it's interesting because it was also the thing that I thought was wild, and I didn't realize. The thing that I super didn't realize about the movie was that who directed it. It was Farrelly. One of they're brothers, and I think it was just one of them, John Farrelly maybe. But so I was looking through his credits. I was like, I know that name. He's the guy who directed Dumb and Dumber.
Really?
And well, the brothers did like all those movies. Dumb and Dumber, Me, Myself, and Irene. What's the one with Brett Favre and Ben Stiller? I can't remember. It's got a woman's name in the title. It's the one where the guy gets semen on his ear and she thinks it's hair gel.
Oh, there's something
about Mary. They did something about Mary, Dumb and Dumber 2 or whatever. Slapstick cheeseball comedy stuff.
Interesting.
And then did this, which is also like, and from the trailer, very clearly like somewhat of a comedy. Like it's definitely playing with like that, writing that comedy drama line, kind of like Black Klansman to some extent. But yeah, it was like very surprising to me that he directed, because it didn't, and I was like, whoa, did he make a turn later in his career to like more like sort of serious kind of like interesting topic, like, you know, no, just this one out of nowhere. And I was like, well, it's interesting. And especially too, because those movies, I think probably of a lot of the, like a lot of comedy from the 90s and early 2000s hasn't aged very well.
Yeah.
And so like that same idea of like that being the guy directed, like the sort of creative vision behind this very sensitive political kind of discussion about race seems like a weird choice, whereas I'm more interested to hear what Spike Lee has to say about race in America than I am fucking John Farrelly or whatever. Like, and it's like,
I'm seeing a lot of people saying that now too, in kind of the aftermath of that movie winning, that it's not gonna age well.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen a lot of people comparing it to Crash.
I
don't know how apt that comparison is.
It's been a long time since I've seen Crash, and when I saw it, I wasn't of the age to appreciate whether, like, I wasn't good at critiquing film at that point. And so a lot of people comparing it in the same, because that's also widely regarded as like one of the worst movies to win Best Picture, and it's one of those things that just feels really tone deaf by the Academy too, of like, they look at it very surface level and like, look, this is it's a movie about racism and how racism is bad, and the relationship between a white guy and a black guy, and it like feels very progressive and good, but it's like, maybe we don't give the award to the old white guy who made a movie about that, when we have 2 movies also about that, written and directed by people of color who have lived that experience and have probably a little more interesting of a perspective on it than one of the Farrelly brothers. Like, I
mean, it is really, it says something about the Academy, and
it just feels weird.
Who makes up the Academy and what their kind of outlook is.
Yeah, and that's not to say, like, obviously, I haven't seen it, so if it's objectively just a better movie than those things, like, I say objectively, there's no way for something to be objectively better or whatever, but like, so I have no idea, I don't know. I saw Klansman and I saw Black Panther. I didn't see Green Book, so I can't really judge it in relation to those films. But there is something that feels, without having seen it, tone deaf, and that reflects what a lot of people on the internet have sort of said about it.
Yeah. Well, Julia Roberts announced that, and I immediately scrambled for my phone to get on Twitter.
Yeah. I think my favorite was, I think it was during the red carpet ceremony beforehand. A British reporter asked Spike Lee his thoughts about Green Book, and like if he was offended by it or something like that. And he didn't say anything for a second. And he just kind of looked at him and smiled, and he goes, you British people have a saying, it's not my cup of tea. Or something like that, and then just like walks away. I saw just a little clip of it that somebody tweeted or something, and I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I was a little surprised. I thought they were going to just give it to Bohemian Rhapsody. I really did.
That would have also been incredibly tone deaf, given the singer stuff. But that wouldn't have surprised me. And I also heard it was not good. But that's one of the other memes going around, is that Bohemian Rhapsody did win Best Editing. And there's a million memes of people just posting segments from the movie and just how chaotically it is edited. Like, it doesn't look well edited to me. Now, this is excerpts taken out, 30-second excerpts pulled from the film, where it's just like, but there's so many cuts that seem completely unmotivated, and it's wild that, again, out of context, it's wild to me that would win Best Editing. But and that's what everybody, a lot of people on the internet are saying. But it's interesting. So I think that was all I had to say about the Oscars.
Large, fluffy pink dresses seemed to be the fashion. Yeah. I noted. I like looking at the dresses. Yeah. I do. It's always interesting to me. But I did note multiple oversized bright pink dresses.
And one oversized black tux dress.
Yes.
That dude was fucking rocking. Billy Porter.
Yeah.
Just killing that thing. I've never seen a tux dress, but it was a look, and he made it work. So
he owned it.
He did. He owned it. So yeah, that was the Oscars. They happened. Again, we barely watched them.
That's almost always how I feel.
That's always how I feel about it. I'm a little interested. Like last year, I was like, oh, cool. I'm glad Del Toro won. He won director and best picture. Yeah. And I loved Shape of Water was like my favorite film in 2017. So I was glad that it won. And this year, I would have been happy if Black Panther won, or although I might make the argument that I think Into the Spider-Verse is a better film than Black Panther, but an animated movie is not going to get, when there's an animated category, it's not going to be nominated for Best Picture. But so It happened. Let's preview Mrs. Doubtfire, or as it's called in novel form.
It actually was published under 2 titles.
Oh, okay.
In novel form.
There you go. Sorry, I don't want to jump ahead on your fun facts, but
yeah. Well, let's get into book facts.
Yeah,
then.
That's what I meant. Book facts.
Yeah.
His marriage is ending.
My marriage is not ending. It's just on hiatus.
To put his family back together, Daniel Hillard needed a job.
Do you have any special skills?
I do voices.
Yeah! Nancy and I are still looking for the other half of my head.
Look at me right now, Moneypenny. I want to undo that bow and get to know you.
Mr. Hillard, do you consider yourself humorous?
I used to.
So this is a 1987 book by British author Anne Fine. And like I said, it was published under 2 titles. It was Madame Doubtfire in the UK and Alias Madame Doubtfire in the US. I tried to find out why that decision was made. I couldn't find anything out about it, so I have no idea.
All right.
But for some reason, the US publisher decided they needed that alias on there.
Alias. I feel like a spy thriller than Alias Madame Doubtfire.
America does tend to be a little puritanical. So maybe they wanted something extra to explain why there was a man dressed as a woman on the cover.
Yeah, maybe.
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 America gets like that.
Yeah, it's true.
So I thought this was going to be a children's book, and it's not a children's book, but it was actually intended for like the older end of the middle grade to like the younger end of the young adult range.
Gotcha.
So like slightly above what I was expecting that this book would be for.
Yeah.
I was thinking it would be for like, I don't know, like the 7 to 10 range.
And it's more the 11.
It's more like 13. The 11 to 13 or 14.
Yeah.
It's also meant to be satirical. It's a satirical novel, which is interesting to me because, at least from what I remember, it's been a while since I've seen the movie, but I feel like the movie plays it fairly straight.
The movie's not satirizing anything that I...
or I mean, as straight as you can, considering some of the story's elements.
Yeah. The movie definitely doesn't seem like it's satirizing. At least I would be hard-pressed to figure out what it is going after.
And to be honest, I'm like halfway through the book, and I'm not entirely sure what it's meant to be satirizing either. Possibly divorced parents.
Okay.
Is my thought right now. Like I said, I'm about halfway through, so maybe that'll become a little clearer as I finish it.
Yeah.
But we'll see. So the book didn't win any awards, but it was nominated for 3. Guardian Children's Fiction Prize, the Observer Teenage Fiction Prize, and the Whitbread Children's Book Award was nominated for all those.
Whitbread and not white bread?
I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a British thing. I've never heard of it. Maybe some of our UK listeners can help us out. I have a couple things about the author, since I couldn't find a lot about the book. I didn't know this book existed.
Yeah, no, we did. We
started
posted about it several
stuff.
times on social media, and lots of people seem to agree that they had no idea that
not
this
a
was
clue.
A book.
But the author, Anne Fine, she's written more than 70 children's books.
Wow.
She's actually kind of a pretty prolific, like, British children's author. She did write 2 that won the Carnegie Medal. Mm-hmm. And she's one of only 8 authors to receive that honor more than once, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
When discussing her writing career, Fine has stated, in 1971, my first daughter was born. Unable to get to the library in a snowstorm to change my library books, in desperation, I sat down and started to write a novel. Which I liked because one of the big writing adages is like, if the book you want doesn't exist, you have to write it. Mm-hmm. Which is not quite the same thing going on here, but pretty close. She's out of reading material, so she was like, I guess I'll have to write
myself a book.
Fine was also the Children's Laureate in the UK from 2001 to 2003, which, as I understand, is kind of like being an ambassador for children's literature.
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
Sounds maybe a little bit similar to like the Poet Laureate here in the U.S.
Probably.
And one last thing, I thought this was cool. Fine has supported the campaign Let Books Be Books, the goal of which is to persuade publishers to stop labeling and promoting books as girl books or boy books.
Yeah.
And she said, I thought this was funny, in a 2014 interview, there are girls of all sorts with all interests, and boys of all sorts with all interests. Just meeting a few children should make that obvious enough. But no, these idiotic notions are spouted so often that they become a self-fulfilling societal straitjacket from which all our children suffer.
Yep.
So I thought that was neat, kind of progressive.
Yeah, I thought that at the beginning when you said the name of the initiative, I thought that was going a different direction, and she was going to be sort of the arch nemesis of our podcast. Let books be books. Do not make them into movies ever. And she's wildly against the entire endeavor of our podcast and exploring adaptations. But no, that's
something that I agree with a lot.
Yes, I do as well. Yes. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's talk about the movie that came from said novel, Mrs. Doubtfire.
The terrorists, they ran that way. It was a run by fruiting.
This holiday season,
Surprise.
Robin Williams, Sally Field,
Who needs a husband when I've got you?
in a Chris Columbus film,
Back off!
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Got a top here.
A father's work is never done.
Oh! First here's a woman. I'm getting hot flashes.
So, Mrs. Doubtfire is a 1993 film starring the late, great Robin Williams, Sally Field, and Pierce Brosnan, as well as our second appearance of Matilda.
Yes.
Mara
Actually,
Wilson.
also our second appearance of Sally Field. She was in, shoot. I just totally blanked. The movie with the cats. The cat and the dogs. Homeward Bound.
That's
right,
her voice. Okay,
for.
yes.
She voiced the cat.
Yes, she is she is sassy, and yes, Homeward Bound. Yes, you're right. So that is like, okay. Oof, I was like, what? I don't not remember Sally Field in anything. Yes, her voice. Yeah, correct. It was directed by Chris Columbus. Except for third time we've done.
Yes.
Well, fourth time actually, because he has directed a bunch of stuff, but included in that is Home Alone, Rent, which I didn't know that. The first two Harry Potter movies, and the first two Percy Jackson movies.
Wait, he directed that?
That's what it said, unless I might have been looking at producing.
He also directed Night at the Museum.
Yes,
which we've done.
Yes. So yeah, they used him a lot because he does kind of children's stuff.
He seems like kind of like the children's movie, like family friendly, feel good,
and like action adventure go to. Because see, when we did Percy Jackson, we didn't do prequel episodes,
right?
So we didn't do as much as like looking into who did what on them. But I'm like 99. Yeah, Chris Columbus. It is.
That's interesting. I wonder if they brought him on because of Harry Potter.
I guarantee that's why they did. Yep. Yes. It was written by Randy Singer and Leslie Dixon, the latter of which, the first one has worked mostly in TV. The second one, though, has done Freaky Friday, the Hairspray movie from like 2012 or whatever, and Limitless most recently with the Bradley Cooper film about like a drug that makes your brain work super good or something. Kind of a wide-ranging series of films she's worked on. It was nominated for one Oscar. One Oscar, was nominated for 3. The Oscar it won was Best Makeup, and it was won by Greg Canham, Yolanda Tusing, and V. Neal. All three of these people, kind of legends in the industry, especially we ever wanted to talk about and mention V. Neal, because she's been nominated for and won a bunch of Academy Awards. Won 3 of them, has been nominated for many more. And here's just a list of some of the movies she has worked on as a makeup artist or usually like the head of the makeup department for the film. Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, every movie in the Pirates franchise, The Hunger Games, both of the Amazing Spider-Man movies, Galaxy Quest, Austin Powers, Matilda, speaking of Matilda, Dick Tracy, Hook, Batman Returns, Mars Attacks, Star Trek the Motion Picture, and like a whole lot more. And she won 3 Oscars for Beetlejuice, Mrs. Doubtfire, and Ed Wood. Mm-hmm. So a lot of Tim Burton films in there.
And a lot of stuff that's known for
makeup and effects and that sort of thing, yes. And she's one of the hosts on Face Off, which is a show we really enjoy. It's available. We just started rewatching it. It's available on YouTube TV. And what it is, or at least it's available on demand on YouTube TV. I looked and it's not anywhere else. It's not on any other streaming service for free right now. It used to be on Hulu.
It's on like Hulu Plus.
Oh, maybe
whatever,
with Hulu Plus. Yeah. Maybe.
We don't pay for that.
We have regular Hulu. But if you have YouTube TV, they're all on demand, and you can buy them or rent them from Amazon Prime or whatever. But it's a game show, or not a game show.
It's like a Project Runway-esque kind of show.
Or Master Chef or Top Chef or any of those kind of game shows where it's some sort of artist or...
And they get like a challenge every week.
And there starts with 13 of them, and then they get whittled down, and somebody ultimately wins over the course of 13 episodes. But in Face Off's instance, instead of cooking or fashion or whatever, it's a special effects makeup.
Yeah.
So they create characters. They have different challenges where they create different character makeups. It's a really good show. I really enjoy it. We both really enjoy it. Kind of watching the creative process and seeing, the decisions people make. I always find that really fascinating anyways.
That is a thing that I really like about Face Off is that it focuses a lot on like showing how they do things and like what their process is, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's one of the best shows and one of the best sort of those type of quote unquote reality shows in my opinion, because it doesn't focus on like personal drama and like it does that more in the first season, but they almost drop it completely in like this by the third or fourth season. It pretty much drops that all completely and just focuses on the art and like the sort of, when there is drama during a project, they don't like not show it, but they don't have as much of the like weird behind the scenes, like them in the houses bickering, whatever. Again, the first season has a little more of that than later seasons, but yeah, it just focuses on these are really talented people, watch them do cool stuff and talk about why they're doing what they're doing and how. And I think it's fascinating and a really fun show. It just ended, or they did like 14 seasons.
Yeah, there's a ton of it. Yeah. A ton of back episodes to watch.
There's 14 seasons and a spin-off season where they do like a Chopped style. If you watch the TV show Chopped, they did like a Chopped style season of a spin-off called Game Face, where it's independent episodes. But anyways, check it out. Face Off, highly recommend it. And V. Neal is one of the judges, along with Glenn Hetrick, the ultimate edgelord, and Neville Page for a lot of it, and sometimes Patrick Tatopoulos.
I love Glenn Hetrick. He looks like if Hot Topic came to life as a person.
Yes. He's very top heavy.
Yes.
Very top heavy man. Anyways, I don't know if anybody else out there cares about Face Off, but we do. So no, we're done talking about it. Speaking of the makeup, the Robin Williams makeup when he was Mrs. Doubtfire took roughly 4 to 5 hours every day to apply. According to one biography, Robin Williams decided to test out the believability of his makeup by going out into the world and walking around with it on to see if anybody recognized him. In fact, he walked into an adult bookstore / sex shop and bought several dildos as an 80-year-old woman or 90-year-old British woman, and did so without being recognized. So
wow,
it worked. I thought this was interesting. During the scene where Mrs. Sellner comes to his apartment, it's the famous one where he sticks his face in the pie or the cake or whatever. He's serving her tea and the icing, so he sticks his face in and I don't want to ruin everything about it, but he sticks his face in the pie to cover his face so she can't see him, and it starts melting off his face. This wasn't planned. It was so hot from all the lights and stuff that the icing just started like melting off and falling, and everything he like does in relation to that in that scene is just improvised, which Robin Williams famously improvised a ton on all the sets and everything, and Christopher Columbus just gave him free reign, like just do whatever you want. They would do a million takes and they just let him do whatever he wants. So much so that to the point that Chris Columbus said that we could have cut a PG version of this movie, a PG-13 movie, an R version, or an NC-17 version of this film based on the different, all of the different takes we got from Robin Williams and the stuff he made. I would love to see
some of those cuts.
The R-rated version of this movie would be really, really interesting, but they were always going for a PG-13, so. So the prosthetic that Robin Williams uses in this movie is actually a prop, which we would know if you watched Face Off, because the way that prosthetics work in real life is nothing how they work in this film. In this movie, he has like one big rubber mask, basically looking thing that he sticks on his face. In reality, the makeup was like 8 separate pieces, which is when you're doing that sort of makeup that moves the way it does and looks as real as it does, it can't be a big rubber mask or else it will look like a big rubber mask. So like your chin piece is separate and your cheeks are separate and the neck piece is separate and the head,
and a nose piece.
Right, and all those pieces get blended together. And, especially places where you think your mouth moves or your eyes moves, then there's creases and that sort of thing have to kind of be separate and split up so that it moves more naturally. So, yeah. It was, for me, I was like, well, that's clearly not how that would work. But if you don't know, like when I was a kid, I had no idea. I was like, that could be how it works. But yeah, 8 different pieces for his makeup.
If it had been just one rubber mask, it would have been a horror movie.
Yes, it would have been truly terrifying. The mask we see in the film, if he were wearing that in reality, he would look like Leatherface or something. It would be terrifying. During the restaurant scene at the end of the movie, Mrs. Doubtfire's teeth fall into the glass of champagne or whatever. Mm-hmm. The rest of the cast sitting in the scene had no idea this was going to happen, and so apparently all of their reactions on film in that moment are genuine. They're genuine, like sort of unrehearsed reactions to that scene. This is a fun little fact. Throughout the movie, Mrs. Doubtfire says the word "dear" 101 times because it is kind of a go-to. For her character is "dear." This is interesting. Blake Lively was considered for the role of Natalie Hillard. Hilliard, however it's pronounced, made it to the final round of auditions between her and Mara Wilson, and then ultimately Mara Wilson got the role, and this was actually Mara Wilson's first film, which I didn't know.
Really?
Yep, it was her film debut. So you didn't bring this up, so I'm going to mention it. When Anne Rice was approached to make a movie out of her novel, her original choice for the lead role was Warren Beatty. Because Beatty's reputation, and I thought this is interesting. The reason she wanted Beatty was because of his reputation as a great womanizer. She thought it would be hysterical to see him dress up and pretend to be a woman.
Well, that's one way to cast things.
Sure, I thought that was interesting.
I just want to point out you said Anne Rice.
Oh, fine.
Instead
sorry.
of Anne Fine, Anne Rice, very different.
Yeah.
Very different books. That's like Interview with a Vampire and all that stuff.
Yeah, I just misread it. I have Anne Fine here. My brain, that would be very different. So this was interesting. Tim Allen was offered the role of Miss Doubtfire / Daniel Hillard. I like that this particular website, I got this from IMDb. It says Tim Allen was offered the roles of both. Oh, never mind. I read, was offered the roles of both Mrs. Doubtfire and Daniel Hillard, and I'm like, well, obviously. But it was offered Mrs. Doubtfire, Daniel Hillard, and Stu Denmeyer, and Stu's Pierce Brosnan's character. Yeah. He rejected both of them, which I'm glad for. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't have worked in either of them, I don't think.
No, it wouldn't have been.
More so Robin Williams is one, but even still.
He's too, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
He doesn't have that same softness to him that Robin Williams does. That I think you need to pull off a role like this.
I agree. I don't think it would have been half the movie with Tim Allen. Yeah. But that's just because Tim Allen's a tenth of the comic or comedian and actor that Robin Williams is. So, other people that were considered for the role of Miss Daniel Hillard / Miss Doubtfire, which I thought, this is just, they say considered, and I wonder in this instance if it isn't just like, let's throw names at the wall of people who we might get, because it's literally just like huge names other than one person who at the time I thought was interesting. So the big 3 names, Mel Gibson, Harrison Ford, and Tom Hanks, which is like, you're just slamming like the 3 biggest stars at, out and just being like, well, maybe we'll get them to do it. But then the 4th one, especially at the time, Bryan Cranston, which at the time, the only thing I can think he was even in was Seinfeld at that point. Which even that, I don't know, is 93. It would have been...
Because, that's before...
That's well before...
it's well before Breaking Bad.
But it's even before Malcolm in the Middle. Yeah, so I'm just like, what was he even... Because, he was in Seinfeld really early on.
Did he get his start doing stand-up maybe?
I don't think he did.
No?
I don't think so.
I was going to say maybe
he could have, but I don't know much about, his career. until like Malcolm in the Middle. But I'm gonna scroll back and see what he had been in. He was in an episode of One Life to Live in 85. He was uncredited in a movie. He was in an episode of Chips in 82. He was in an episode of Hill Street Blues in 87. He was in an episode of Return of the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman. Oh, the movie in 87. A bunch of stuff nobody's heard of. It was in one episode of Baywatch in 89. He was in Corporate Affairs, some movie, but I don't know if that's like a big movie or not. He was in one episode of The Flash in 1991. He was in 2 episodes of Matlock in 91, but only 2. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything on here that you would be like, well, obviously, Bryan Cranston to lead this. Like, he's all like, it looks all like bit parts and stuff in things.
Oh, maybe he knew somebody who was like on the casting board.
Yeah, maybe.
Threw his name in there as a favor or something.
Because he did show up in 2 episodes of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in 1993 as Twin Man / Snizzard. I assume Snizzard is when it gets bigger, maybe? I don't know. Snizzard. But yeah, and then he doesn't really blow up, he's not really, he was in an episode of Babylon 5. I don't know.
Interesting.
He was in That Thing You Do in 1996, but yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
I can't see any of those 4 guys you named doing this role.
I could see Tom Hanks the most.
Maybe Tom Hanks.
The other, Harrison Ford, Mel Gibson, not at all. Bryan Cranston, I could see, but I'm just surprised he was, Robin Williams is the only choice. And finally, the film earned $219 million in North America, along with $222 million worldwide, or in other countries, worldwide gross of $440 million, which I like this fact, making it the highest grossing cross-dressing film in history. Which is a very specific, I don't know what that list is, man. Okay. And it became the second highest grossing film of 1993, behind only, do you know, 93? Highest grossing movie in 93.
Aladdin?
I'll give you a hint. We've done it on this show.
1993? I don't know.
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park was 93.
Yep.
I always think that was slightly later than it was.
I know. I always think 94, 95, but yeah, 93. 1993 for Jurassic Park. So that's it for the preview of Mrs. Doubtfire / alias Madame Doubtfire. That will be our episode next week. I don't know if it's on anywhere to stream.
I don't know either. I haven't checked yet.
But
I'm assuming I can get it through our library.
Yeah, I'm sure it won't be too hard to find. It's on TV a lot. You can probably, if you have TV, you could probably DVR it pretty easy because it shows up quite often. I was just on a couple weeks ago. I noticed. I saw it and turned it on for a few minutes. But anyways, that's next week's episode. Until that time, you can do us the great favor, like always, of rating, reviewing us on iTunes, Stitcher, or anywhere else you listen to our fine podcast. Subscribing to us on all of the social media. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. We are on Goodreads. We have a subreddit, r/thisfilmislit. And I think that was everything. That was all social media, right? Yeah, those are all of them. And until next time, guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else,
keep reading books,
keep watching movies,
and keep being awesome.